What do you think about, if you've been paying attention to Kanye West, a recent controversial outburst on social media about um, Jews, Black people, racism in general, slavery, Holocaust, all of these topics that he touched on in different ways on different platforms, but including Twitter. What do you do with that? And like, what do you do with that from a platform perspective, and what do you do from a humanity perspective of how to add love to the world?
Let's should we take both sides of that?
Sure.
Option one is he is completely out of line, and option two is he's not. Just to simplify.
Sure. Right. Yeah.
So the path one is he is an incredibly important tastemaker in the world that defines the belief system for a lot of people. And there just is no room for any form of racism or bias or anti-Semitism in today's day and age, particularly by people whose words and comments will be amplified around the world. We've already paid a large price for that. And then the expectation of success is some amount of societal decorum that keeps moving the ball forward. The other side would say, life, I think, goes from harmony to disharmony to repair. And anybody who has gone through a very complicated divorce will tell you that in that moment, your life is extremely disharmonious and you are struggling to cope. And because he is famous, we are seeing a person really struggling in a moment that may need help. And we owe it to him, not for what he said, because that stuff isn't excusable, but we owe it to him to help him in a way, and particularly his friends. And if he has real friends, hopefully what they see is that. What I see on the outside looking in is a person that is clearly struggling.
Can I ask you like a human question? And I know it's outside looking in, but there's several questions I want to ask. So one is about the pain of going through a divorce and having kids and all that kind of stuff. And two, when you're rich and powerful and famous, I don't know, maybe you can enlighten me to which is the most corruptive. But how do you know who are the friends to trust? So a lot of the world is calling Kanye insane, or like has mental illness, all that kind of stuff. And so how do you have friends close to you that say something like that message, but from a place of love and where they actually care for you, as opposed to trying to get you to shut up? The reason I ask all those questions, I think, if you care about the guy, how do you help him?
Right. I've been through a divorce. It's gut-wrenching. The most horrible part is having to tell your kids. I can't even describe to you how proud I am of and how resilient these three beautiful little creatures were when my ex-wife and I had to sit them down and talk through it. And for that thing, I'll be just so protective of them and so proud of them. And it's hard. Now, I don't know that that's what he went through, but it doesn't matter. In that moment, there's no fame, there's no money, there's nothing. There's just the raw intimacy of a nuclear family breaking up. In that, there is a death, and it's the death of that idea. And that is extremely, extremely profound in its impact, especially in your children. It is really hard, really hard.
Could you have seen yourself in the way you see the world being clouded during, especially at first, to where you would make poor decisions outside of that nuclear family? So like poor business decisions, poor tweeting decisions, poor
I think that
writing decisions.
If I had to boil down a lot of those, what I would say is that there are moments in my life, Lex, where I have felt meaningfully less than. And in those moments, the loop that I would fall into is I would look to cope and be seen by other people. So I would throw away all of the work I was doing around my own internal validation, and I would try to say something or do something that would get the attention of others. And oftentimes, when that loop was unproductive, it's because those things had really crappy consequences. So, that was yeah. So yeah, I went through that as well. So I had to go through, this disharmonious phase in my life, and then to repair it. I had the benefit of meeting someone and building a relationship, block by block, where there was just enormous accountability, where my partner Nat has just incredible empathy, but accountability. And so she can put herself in my shoes sometimes when I'm a really tough person to be around, but then she doesn't let me off the hook. She can forgive me, but it doesn't make, what I may have said or whatever, excusable. And that's been really healthy for me. And it's helped me repair my relationships, be a better parent, be a better friend to my ex-wife, who's a beautiful woman, who, I love deeply and will always love her. And it took me a few years to see that it was just a chapter that had come to an end, but she's an incredible mother and an incredible businesswoman. And I'm so thankful that I've had two incredible women in my life. That's like a blessing.
But it's hard. So with that, it's hard to find a person that has that. I mean, a lot of stuff you said is pretty profound, but having that person who has empathy and accountability. So basically, that's ultimately what great friendship is, which is people that love you, have empathy for you, but can also call you out on your bullshit.
She's a LeBron James-like figure. And the reason I say that is I've seen and met so many people. I've seen the distribution on the scale of friendship and empathy.
She's the LeBron James of friendship.
She's a goat. Well, what's so funny is we have a dinner around poker, and it's taken on a life of its own, mostly because of her, because these guys look to her. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. She's thinking her registers are already full. She's thinking all kinds of crap with me. But it's a very innate skill, and it's paired with, but it's not just an emotional thing. Meaning, she's the person that I make all my decisions with. These decisions we're making together as a team. I've never understood that. There's that African proverb like, "Go fast, go alone. Go far, go together." And Lex, since I was born, I was by myself, and I had to cope, and I didn't have a good toolkit to use into the world. And in these last 5 or 6 years, she's helped me. And at first, my toolkit was literally like sticks, and then I found a way to, she helped me sharpen a little rock, and that became a little knife. But even that was crap. And then she showed me fire, and then I forged a knife, and that's what it feels like, where now this toolkit is like most average people. And I feel humbled to be average because I was down here on the ground. So it's made all these things more reasonable. So I see what comes from having deep, profound friendships and love to help you through these critical moments. I have another friend who I would say just completely unabashedly loves me. This guy, Rob Goldberg. He doesn't hold me accountable that much, which I love. Like, I could say I killed a homeless person. He's like, they probably deserve it. Whereas Nat would be like, that was not good, what you just did. So, but I have both. I mean, I have Nat every day. Rob, I don't talk to that often, but to have two people, I had zero. I think most people, unfortunately, have zero. So I think like what he needs is somebody to just listen. You don't have to put a label on these things. And you just have to try to guide in these very unique moments where you can just like de-escalate what is going on in your mind. And I suspect what's going on in his mind, again, to play armchair quarterback, I don't know, is that he is in a moment where he just feels lower than low. And we all do it. We've all had these moments where we don't know how to get attention. And if you didn't grow up in a healthy environment, you may go through a negative way to get attention. And it's not to excuse it, but it's to understand it.
That's so profound. The feeling less than, and at those low points, going externally to find it, and maybe creating conflict and scandal to get that attention.
The way that my doctor explained it to me is you have to think about your self worth like a knot. It's inside of a very complicated set of knots. So it's like some people don't have these knots. It's just presented to you on a platter. But for some of us, because of the way we grow up, it's covered in all these knots. So the whole goal is to loosen those knots. And it happens slowly, it happens unpredictably, and it takes a long time. And so while you're doing that, you are going to have moments where when you feel less than, you're not prepared to look inside and say, actually, here's how I feel about myself. It's pretty cool. I'm happy with where I'm at.